Heavy e-bike racks, sore backs, wasted time. Loading your e-bike rack shouldn't be this hard. E-bike racks are heavy, awkward, and unsafe to handle. Loading them alone can injure your back or damage your vehicle. Meet the Rack Lift from Hitch Rack Pro. Store, move, lift, and connect your heavy e-bike or e-trike rack effortlessly. No back pain. Safe and easy. Stop struggling, start riding. The Rack Lift, order yours today.
Hey guys, in this video, we're going to talk about some of the things you should consider when purchasing your first e-bike. So let's get into the video. Now, for some of you, one of the big dilemmas is going to be whether you are looking for an e-bike or an e-trike. Some of you already know you're going to want an e-trike, maybe some limitations or something that's preventing you from riding a regular bike. So we're going to start and talk about this momentarily before we circle around and talk about the other bikes. So if you're thinking about buying an e-trike, there's a couple of things right here that you want to consider, and that is the overall dynamics or shape of the bike, because there's a couple different styles out there. This style right here, where the position of the seat is located and where the pedals are located, the pedals are out in front of you just a little bit. That's preferred. Okay, that's where you want it to be, because if you look at some pictures online, you'll see some trikes have pedals that are really right underneath the seat. And that is really uncomfortable when you're sitting here on your seat and your feet are way back here behind you and you're trying to pedal like this, right? So you want your pedals to be out in front of you a little bit. Now there is a style of trike that is called semi-recumbent, where the pedals are even further out. And that, in my opinion, is the most comfortable trike, and most people tend to gravitate to that direction. When considering a trike, a lot of people are looking for a folding style. They say, oh, I want to be able to fold up my trike. Listen, be aware, when you fold up this trike, all you're doing is you're swinging the front half of the bike around to the side. It still makes it big and bulky. It's just a little bit wider at that point. It's still bulky. It's still just as heavy. So don't think that because you can fold it up, it's going to be easier for you to handle. Reality is it's even more difficult to handle because you got bigger bulk that you're trying to lift up now because you can't roll it anywhere. So be aware of that. I have found that a folding bike or folding trike isn't something that's necessary, for me at least. Now, if you're considering a trike, you'll see that most trikes come with a seat that's kind of designed like this one is here. It's got a nice little backrest, and it can provide some comfort. It also provides some confidence, because if you're a little uneasy or a little unsteady, having something there pressing up against your back can be a little reassuring when you're on the trike and you're going down the road or the bike path. But here's the problem with almost all trikes, okay? This backrest is not adjustable this way. And the problem is a lot of us, especially as we get older, we get a little more round in the middle. When you're sitting here, this is pushing against your back and it's actually preventing you from sitting on the seat nice and square. You're actually sitting on the seat right about here, and it's going to feel like you're falling off. So a lot of people, when they buy a trike, they're really disappointed with the seat. They end up buying another one where it's just the seat with no backrest at all. Because unfortunately, this design, this does not come off. So just be aware of that. Now stick with me a minute, because we're going to go over here and talk about some e-bikes for a moment, but we're going to talk about some things that are similar to trikes, such as motor size, battery size, and that sort of thing. And we're going to get into that right now. So if you're someone who is thinking about, you want a bike, okay, but you don't know where to start, you don't know, it's confusing out there. I get it, because there's so many different brands, there's so many different styles, and there's just a lot of parts and components to an e-bike. It can really get confusing when you're not familiar with it. So I'm going to help clarify some of that right now. When you're talking about an e-bike, one of the things you should probably do is think about how you want to ride or where you want to ride. And that's going to help narrow things down for you. If you know you're going to stick to the city streets or your neighborhood streets, then something like a fat tire is appropriate, or something like a thin tire like you see over here is also appropriate for those conditions. Whereas if you know you want to do some trail riding, you're going to be in the dirt or the grass or the gravel or something like that, then you'll probably want to stick with something like a fat tire over here. And the most common fat tire size is 4 inches. That's the width we're talking about. Since we're talking about tires, another common size you need to be aware of is most e-bike tires come in what's called a 20-inch, and that's how tall they are, or they come in a 26-inch, which is what this one is over here. When you have a 26-inch tire bike, it sits a lot taller. So if you're a shorter person, trying to get on a bike this big with those big tires may not work out for you so well. You probably want to think about sticking with something that is a shorter tire, like the 20-inch over there. So once you've kind of figured out where it is you're going to ride or how you're going to ride, something else you want to consider is, what size battery do you need and what size motor do you need? Because there's some choices there when you're out there shopping. And a lot of folks don't understand that that's actually an important component you want to be thinking about. Motor size, not so much. There's two common sizes. Okay, you can get a 500 watt motor, which is what this one is over here, or you can get a 750 watt motor, which is most common on most e-bikes. The difference in the two is the 500 watt motor is going to take a little bit less electricity compared to a 750 watt motor, but the 750 watt motor typically is going to give you more power, and it's going to allow you to sometimes go a little bit faster. But that's even subject and up to discussion, because this particular bike right here, this Vituvia Zeal LT7, has a nice powerful 500 watt motor. And this is perfectly fine on city streets and for commuting and that sort of thing. Maybe not so much if you got a lot of hills to contend with, because if you got a lot of hills, you probably definitely want to stick with something like a 750 watt motor. Now, not to confuse you and muddy the waters even more than they've already been, there's something else you need to be aware of when it comes to motors, and that is the torque rating, okay? That is the actual power that the motor is going to give you in order to get up steep hills. The average seems to be about 80 Newton meters of torque. That's the rating for a lot of bikes, 70 Newton meters, 80 Newton meters. But you have some bikes, like this Magicycle Deer over here, it has 96 Newton meters of torque. And what that means is when you start pedaling or when you hit the throttle, it's going to really kind of get up and go, and it allows you to go up a really steep hill without any hesitation, whereas something like a 70 Newton meters worth of torque, a motor like that, and I'm pointing over here, but a motor like that, you're going to struggle, okay, trying to go up a steeper incline, and you're really going to have to put a lot of energy and effort into it in order to get up and over. So that's just one of the things to consider. If you're in flat ground like we are here in Florida, then that Newton meters, that rating doesn't matter a whole lot. If you live in a hilly country, you've got some mountains around you, then that is very important. Make sure you stick with something that is about 90 Newton meters or higher. The next most important component to consider is battery size. And a lot of people get this confused because they think battery size means, how fast it'll go, that sort of thing, but it's not. It's strictly about how much battery you have is going to affect how much range you have, how far you're able to ride. And here's where a lot of people make mistakes, okay? When you're out there and you're thinking about going for a ride, you might be thinking, oh, I'm only going to go a couple of miles at a time, and so I could use a small battery. Well, a smaller battery could be good because it reduces the weight of the bike, so it makes it a lot lighter. But what most people find is once they get on an e-bike for the first time, once they get familiar with it, they realize they can go a lot further for a lot longer than they ever anticipated. And next they start running into what's called range anxiety. You might find yourself 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 miles from home and then thinking, I got to turn around and get back home. And if you have a small battery, you might start running into some trouble. You might be pedaling at home or pushing at home or having someone to come pick you up because you run out of battery. And that's something nobody wants to happen, right? You buy an e-bike because you want to get outside, you want to get outdoors, you want to have a good time. So don't let range anxiety come into play. So get you an e-bike that has a suitable size battery. What would that be? You have e-bikes like the Magicycle Deer over here that has a 20 amp hour battery. You have something like the Vituvia over here, which has like an 18 amp hour battery. But there are some bikes out there that only have a 10 amp hour battery. How far does 10 amp hours get you? It depends on how much weight the bike is carrying. It depends on if you're going up a lot of hills. It depends on if you're pedaling and putting forth any effort, or if you're strictly using the throttle and going full speed. These are some of the things that factor into how big of a battery you need and how far a battery is going to get you. Now be aware of this important fact right here. Companies, and I'm not pointing out electric specifically, but all bike companies, they're going to give you an idea of how far that battery will go. And they might tell you, hey, you can go 60 miles on this thing, right? But the reality is that is under best laboratory conditions. Realistic conditions, you want to cut whatever they're estimating, you want to cut it in half at least, okay? Because time and time again, I've talked to people who went out and said, yeah, I bought this e-bike that's supposed to go like 70 miles, and I got 30 miles and the battery died. Yeah, that's because of maybe you're a larger person, maybe you're going up a lot of hills, maybe you're going full bore, full throttle, real fast. Yeah, it's just not the same. It's kind of deceiving there, so be aware of that little secret. Okay, now stick with me to the end because there's another very important consideration that you need to make before you make your purchase, and we're going to talk about that. But while we're talking about e-bikes and styles, let's talk for a moment about frame size and frame styles because there's important factors there to consider as well. This right here would once be considered a girl's bike because it's a step through. Remember back in the older days, the girls would wear the dresses and the skirts and they'd have a little bike that they could just step over and get on, right? And the guys would have a bike where they would have to step over because there would be a bar going right across about here, right? And that's called a step over. So we're referring to a step over bike or a step through bike. But these days they're gender neutral, okay? So myself, I prefer a step through bike just because I have some hip problems. If you're a senior, somebody open age, you may find that you want to step through because you don't want to swing that leg over to get onto your bike, right? It's just a lot more convenient getting on and off. So that's something to consider. Other small things that may be important to some people that aren't important to others are things like whether it has blinkers or whether it has, working headlight and tail lights. Most all e-bikes will have a working headlight and a tail light. Not all of them will have blinkers, okay? That's kind of a nice little thing to have. But all of them will have some form of pedal assist and or throttle, with one exception. There is what's called a Class 1 e-bike, and it is pedal assist only. It does not come with a throttle at all. That would be Class 1. A Class 2 e-bike is something that'll go up to 20 miles an hour, but it has both pedal assist and a throttle. You can ride it either way. And then a Class 3 is an e-bike that can go up to 28 miles an hour, or even a little more than that, but it still has pedal assist and it still has a throttle. So just be aware of those differences. You will find some bikes out there that manufacturers have started producing that will go faster than that, 32, 35, 40, 45 miles an hour. And there's huge discussion of whether that should even be considered an e-bike, and that's not the purpose of this video. That's for you to decide later. Let's go ahead and talk about that other big component, could be a big factor in whether or not you enjoy the ride or not when you purchase an e-bike. And that is, what type of sensor does it have? E-bikes are designed with one or two different types of sensors. It's called a cadence sensor or a torque sensor, okay? A cadence sensor is going to give you a completely different riding experience than a torque sensor. Let me explain. When you're riding a cadence sensor bike, okay, as soon as you start to move these pedals a little bit, whether you're pedaling or whether it's just sitting here and you're just moving the pedal to get it in a different position, that bike can kick into gear and take off and start moving. It's going to go up to the highest speed for whatever your pedal assist is set at on your display. You have an option. Most bikes have 1 through 5. You can choose pedal assist 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And with each one of those, there's usually a designated speed limiter for it. Let's say, for instance, pedal assist 1 is 8 miles an hour. As soon as you start to move those pedals, it's going to jump you up to 8 miles an hour. There's no in between, okay? If you bump it up and put it in pedal assist number 2, and let's say, for instance, maybe that's 15 miles an hour, it's going to automatically take you to 15 miles an hour. That's what a cadence sensor bike does. The benefits of that is it doesn't require you to put any pressure on the pedal. All you got to do is just gently, freely move the pedal at any pace, okay? You don't have to go fast. You can go nice and slow. But as long as you're moving the pedal, it tells the motor, let's go, and it's going to take you. Whereas a torque sensor bike is completely different. It's more like an old manual bike. You have to put some pressure into the pedal, and as you put some pressure into the pedal, the motor kicks in, and it's going to take you down the road. And the more pressure you put or the faster you go, the faster the bike is going to go, okay? And a lot of people prefer that because it's not like riding a manual bike where you get a really hard workout. Remember, you're getting the assistance from a motor, so most are set up to where you don't have to put an enormous amount of pressure, but you still have to put some pressure just to keep the crank moving in order to keep the bike moving down the road. You still have your pedal assist 1 through 5, which is most common. So for instance, if you're in pedal assist 1, you can pedal gently and slow. You might only go 3 or 4 miles an hour. But if you want to pedal faster and put a little more pressure in it, it'll take you up to the maximum speed of whatever that bike is set for. In my example, I said 8 miles an hour. Or if you bump it up into number 2 and you want to go 15 miles an hour, you can still pedal nice and slow, and you might only go 3 miles an hour, nice and slow. But as long as you're willing to put the effort into it, you can get it spun up to the top speed for number 2, which in my example is 15 miles per hour. If you're not sure if you want a cadence sensor or a torque sensor, or how it's going to feel and how your body's going to react and if it's okay or not, one suggestion I have is to try to always get out and ride a couple of bikes first. Call your local bike shop, call a friend, call somebody who owns one already, and see if you can go out and ride it just so you get familiar with it. However, something important to know, there's a new technology on the market, and there's a few bike companies that have started to embrace it. And that is, there is a sensor that's called a dual or switchable sensor. So it gives you both options, and you can buy a bike now that has a switchable sensor, like the Magicycle Deer. I'm going to use that as my example. And at a touch of a button, you can switch from that cadence mode or switch it to torque mode. That's huge. A lot of people love it because, especially if you don't know how you want to ride. Here in Florida, on a really hot summer day, I'll keep mine in cadence sensor mode because I don't have to put any effort into it. I can still get out and kind of enjoy my ride without killing myself in the 80–90% humidity that we enjoy here in the summertime. But in the winter months, when the weather is calm and nice, and maybe I want to get more exercise, I'll switch it back over to torque sensor mode, and I can put more effort into it and just enjoy my ride and get some better exercise that way. So that's something for you to consider as well. Guys, that's going to be it for this video. I know it was a little long and a lot of information. If you have any questions, drop them down below. People in the community would be happy to answer it for you. All this information overwhelm you to the point where you never get around to buying an e-bike. Everyone that I have ever met that rode an e-bike for the first time loved it. They said, Richard, I got to get me one of these, and they have. They've gone out and made a purchase because it's life-changing, it's life-altering, especially if you're a senior or somebody who has some limitations, because it can get you outdoors, get you off the couch, and open up a whole new world for you. And even if you're a healthy person, it's a whole new experience, a whole new way to get outdoors and enjoy life. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Give me a thumbs up, comment down below. Share this video with your friends. Share it on social media. That helps this channel to grow. We're going to see you in another video real soon. Ride responsibly, ride safe.